In this video, I will show all the methods to integrate kernel modules and firmware into either the initramfs that I will sometimes call ramdisk because it's shorter, or the rootfs that I might call richOS because I like calling it like this. This continues the previous videos where I showed the same things regardless of PscgBuildOS as kernel built-ins, that is, we put firmware there. And then we reasoned that if we don't put like the firmware there, then it tries to lose firmware, it cannot find it. And this is why when you plan your embedded Linux devices, you need to take heed of what is where. Like if you want to load something in the initramfs, you need to have the firmware available. If you want to load something in rootfs, you need to have it available, and so on. So I will do the loading themselves with Mode Pro. And of course, this can also be automated with etc modules and so on. But the basic idea is that we would want to take files that are built with kernel and installed, like with the kernel building and with kernel modules, with the kernel make modules installed. And we will take only some of the files. This is this else clause here, and copy them into either directly into like the RAM disk, okay, or into a folder that will be either copied or packed as a tarball and then untarred using the overlays mechanism of the PscgBuildOS. So before this kind of code existed, then the same packing would happen, but with all the modules that would go into make modules install. The idea here is that in recent kernels, there are all kinds of compressions that you can see if config module compress is Y. And because of that, the list of the modules that we will copy, and I will also show, of course, how to do that, is present actually without it is present without the suffixes here, okay, that are either zstd, gzip, or xzip. Now, in the past, modules will always .ko, but you can see here, this is like in my local host, in my computer, that they are with zstd. So I can mode prop something, and I can do mode info of something. For example, this is, of course, a typo. And I need to give it only the name. So in the same way, I give like the name, but I give the path, and I like copy them and put like the right suffix according to the kernel config, and then I do cross dep mode. Then if I get this, the result of it, either into the initramfs or into the rootfs, then I'm done. So this is happening. So let me just go ahead and show you what it is that we built and how exactly it is built. So the idea is this. We have a configuration that is called kernel-specific modules initramfs, files list, no suffix. And there are other configurations that are for rootfs. I'll do it later. And there is also for built-in, and built-in means, okay, this is what goes built-in, which is important for firmware, which is this part, and not for modules, because obviously if something is built-in, it's only with the kernel config for kernel modules. So these are modules that you did not see before because we had them as built-in, but the firmware list you did see before. So what I do now differently is that I add RTW882821CU as a module. And I also need to say that RTW88 is enabled, otherwise I will not be able to build. Like doing the set vals mechanism also requires this to happen. So I ran this already, okay? So I'll just go ahead and show you. And there are two things that I want to show you here. So one of them is just stopping at RAM disk, and the other one is actually doing like the change root and so on. So before I do the installation itself, after I built, this is my RAM disk or my initramfs. So look what I have here. Because I packed these friends here, these modules here, then I also have them installed. Okay, so I can mode probe them, which I will. And because I packed this firmware file, with the firmware file, Bluetooth has two, then it will appear here. And for this reason, let me do IPA before I do the mod probe. If I do a mod probe, that's not what I want to do. Look what happens, firmware version, yada, 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 and then install it. So if I do IPA, I will see it. If I do rfkill list all, rfkill will be like on the rootfs. Then I will see it as well, but look at it. Now I have WLN. If I do mod probe to this model, I will no longer have it. Okay, so mod probe to this guy -r, IPA, no longer have it. Now let's take a step back. I will do the installation. Command line equals wait for removable media. It will take a very small time. There it is. I will disconnect the media and I will run it again. I think I put the wrong password, so let me try again. This is what happens when you're hungry. And if I look at /lib, look what I have here. On firmware, I don't have anything. Okay. And on the modules, I have these four guys, although I did not specify them. And I have some other kernel objects. So what is the reason for that? So first of all, let's go ahead and say, okay, we have it. Let's prove it. Let's do like a mod probe here. Like all this depth that you see is because I did like build mode. So first of all, let's install the module that is on the initramfs. It doesn't require anything. Hello. So hello works, okay? It's out of kernel and it works. And if I now go ahead and do, and I do mod probe to this fellow here, then it fails to request firmware. Why? Because I did not have it. It was empty, okay? So this is deliberate. I put the firmware only on the RAM disk, okay? I put the firmware only on the RAM disk. This is where I put it. And the reason why I had all these modules in the rootfs is actually this. I put config kernel copy all built modules to rootfs equals true. So if I did that, and I will continue doing that for a while because I want to show you how to learn to put like the right Bluetooth module, like how we enumerate it. If I put this, then then I just pack everything here. So this is the first thing. I could go ahead and put the particular firmware files, like these ones, I could put them like this. And instead of firmware initramfs file, put rootfs. And then I will have this populated. This is how the mechanism works. But I don't want to do it right now. I want to go ahead and add support for Bluetooth on my rootfs. So let's do that. So I added a little change here. We're building the Bluetooth part of this driver. And look what I do. I put here config kernel specific modules, this time rootfs file list, no suffix. And I put it empty. We don't know it yet. Why do I do it? Because if you want to add your own device, it's better to first know what modules you need. You can populate everything like this, okay? But you want to know the specific list and then make your rootfs smaller, especially if it's something that like the def config or whatever config you have just builds everything. In addition to it, look at it, firmware Linux firmware rootfs file list. I put here the Bluetooth one. I showed you how I could put also the Wi-Fi one, but I put only the Bluetooth one. So initramfs will have only the Wi-Fi modules and the Wi-Fi related firmware, and the rootfs will have Bluetooth. Okay, and look at the configurations here. We must do Bluetooth either wire, no, it's not like a module. Then we have a BT HCI BT USB equals, I think it actually equals M. There is a chance that it is not a trace state. No, it is a trace state. And BTRTL M. If not, if it's Y, then I'll just change it. And there is a thing that I'll show later, like when you do like the BTHCI, BTUSB, it actually requires all kind of modules, even if you don't need them. So like the Intel and Broadcom modules are included like automatically or like automagically, okay? So you're going to see that in when we actually enumerate the things that we need, even though we're only interested in that. So these are the config that will be added, and let's build it. Right now, I put the firmware and I put all the modules that are built like in the kernel. So as I mentioned in another video, building like for Bluetooth takes more time. And here we see that we do like the scripts config in the kernel set vals here. The reason I added the quotes is if I wanted to specify additional firmware there or something like that. And in this particular case, I actually don't need it because I don't have config extra firmware, so it's like pointless. But actually for the extra firmware, I wanted to have space separated list. So this build, it will not take too much, but it takes a little bit more than before. And then we will run it again. So let me quickly pause the video. So it built. And now what I'm going to do, we can look at the log, but I'll try to keep it like shorter. I'm going to install this once again. So I'll do the removable media part. It will still be short. I will now disconnect the media. By the way, in this video, like the dongle is always connected. I don't take it out, so you're not missing anything like on the camera. And now I'm running the rootfs. Now let's see what we have there. If I look at lib firmware, we see the Bluetooth part, okay, that we just added. I only added it, I did not add the Wi-Fi. And if we look at lib modules, then we have these friends, okay? Let's see what happens if I do mod probe to BT USB. So first, let's see that our device is indeed identified, it is identified. And let's do mod probe. First of all, let's mode, do we have anything? Yes. Let's do mod probe to BT USB. Now we're not specific, we don't put the manufacturer, there is a reason for that. And look what's happening. Examining, and then it seems like we have firmware. Okay. Now I could go and add blues to this Alpine system, but I can just see that things work by doing rfkill list all, and it shows me HCI 0, so I enabled Bluetooth. So this is actually what we wanted to achieve here. So we have here Bluetooth, but there is one more thing that I would want to change. I don't want all the rest of the firmware. I want to separate what I put in the RAM disk and what in the initramfs and what I put like in the rootfs. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my build script. And first of all, I want to be more specific about what I want to copy. So let's play a little bit with it. Let's remove. And let's go to lib modules to see like the list. Kernel drivers, Bluetooth, right? And let's do first mod probe to BTUSB. Now, BTUSB, if I look at its dependency with mod info, I will see that it depends on BT Intel, BT BCM, and BT RTL. So if, for example, I go and remove BT Intel, .ko, and I do mod probe -r BT USB, no, without a KO, and I do else mode, and then I do mode probe again. Look what it tells me. Can't load module BT Intel. It will say do the same if I remove BT Broadcom. Okay. I'll try Broadcom. It cannot find Intel, it cannot find the otherwise we say it cannot find Broadcom. It's not happy about it. So what happens if I just want to do the mode probe of BTRTL? That's what I'm looking at. That's what I care about, right? So essentially, sorry, essentially it could work. I mean, it's fine, right? Else mode, it's all good. But by the way, the BCM was inserted like in the Broadcom like before. But will I have the device under RFskill? No, I will not because it requires the USB core for that. So the takeaway from this is that we need to add all four. We need to add BT Intel, BT BCM, BT RTL, and BT USB. And let me do that. Add only them now that I know what I need. It's very important. Otherwise, I could guess, hey, it's BT RTL and that's it. Then things do not work. So let me do just. So before we didn't know what the list suffix is, and we add config kernel copy all build modules to rootfs, and now we're going to change this to false, and here we're going to put like the list. By the way, the default would be false, so I could just delete it. So this is what we have now. We copy all of them, and now I will rebuild. So after installation, I'll get rid of like the wait for movable media, and I'll do root here, and I'll look at lib, and surprise, surprise, I find exactly this. So this is what I wanted to have, and these are like the modules. We have the firmware. We do not have the Wi-Fi modules, and we already know from before that we need to do mode probe to BT USB, and it has all the required dependencies. And if we do rskill list all, then we have Bluetooth. And if I now go ahead and install like the packages, let's say, okay, so blues, I think they call it deprecated. If I just want the HCI config, APK add, sorry. So APK add, yeah, that was the name of the package. And if I do like HCI config or HCI tool, I will see it. But I don't have network because I did not do IP link setup 88.0 and udhgpc-i88.0, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, we already done it in a previous video, but I don't know if I showed our skill in the previous video. So let's do like HCI config, and we see that there is an interface. So we managed to have a loadable kernel module, only the required one in our libraries. The firmware, only the required one. This is like for the rootfs. And I packed, as I said, for the Wi-Fi only, I packed it in the initramfs. Let's see it again. So I'm going to just stop at the RAM disk. So I'll do here command line equals stop at RAM disk. It's the same image, and now without like a install it without switching root, like it's after the installation. This RAM disk also saves left for installation. And here on lib, I have only like the Wi-Fi ones, and this is like where I actually did like the other mode probe, which is nice, which is very nice, and that's what we wanted to show here. I will just show one little thing. The modules, when we select specific ones, they are going to be packed under image material work tier, either firmware or Linux modules, as I showed before. But What happens when I want to get him like into the image? I mentioned several times that there can be like an overlay or no overlay and so on. So the idea is that this is configurable, and I deliberately made it decidable in the function itself. Like you see what's going on for it, and then you just change something in the code. I don't think it's a good idea to have a config value for that, but maybe I will add. And the thing is that under an image material work here, there's installables, and then everything like under like writable overlay usually could be like the OTA stuff, but this can be changeable as well. Like a target ball that goes into like system RW partition by the design. And we have like the overlays that right now each one gets like a partition. It's empty. This means that I copy directly. Now, if I went to here, I'll change it both for the firmware and for the hardware. Build distro add firmware to rootfs method equals direct. I'll change it to one of these, like overlay, writable overlay. I'm not showing all the code. It just prepares like a tarball and then does something. And if I go to the modules install and I change here as well, like to overlay, the reason for not doing it is if you want to develop and just use like a have things on a root file system without installer and test like very quickly, then just copying and not doing the installation method is useful. But there are too many like configuration parameters, so I want things to be like easy. I just want to demonstrate it. This is how I do it. We do it like with the overlay. I'll probably return to direct because if I do something like this that is like partial, then I probably want to I probably want it like the image itself. So I will now go and build it again. I want to show you like the difference. The difference will be that this will be populated, and during the installer, then it will actually like do that as well. I'm pretty sure that I covered it in like other places. That's fine. It's packaging the images already. And let's look at overlays and look what we have here. Linux module specific. Surprise, surprise, looks exactly the same. And we have Linux firmware. It is only what I want to put like under rootfs. So by doing this, we covered everything that we wanted. Let's just install it for the sake of completion. Wait for movable media. So there is the installer, and the installer with partition thing. And then somewhere it should say that it's copied the overlay. So there it goes. Applying tarball overlay Linux firmware, applying overlay Linux model specific tar. Every tarball you put there will be like applied. And if we do that, then it will work on the root file system exactly as expected. So let me just prove it. And it works. And these are exactly the names that we had. And that covers it. So we covered how to separate, how to control what goes where, like what modules go like to the initramfs and what modules go into the rootfs. We were very specific, so it enabled us to write linear systems that do what they need to do. And of course, like for the module insertion itself, if you have the firmware and you don't load the module to after, if you load the firmware before, if you load the module before the firmware is available, then you may have problem unless the driver knows, like the module knows to handle it and retry later. And otherwise, it's better like to plan like with modules and know what you're doing. And if you want the loader to be then modules to be loaded automatically, you can use etc modules and so on. So you usually want to go to modules load something and then add this here. So this covers it. And with this, your knowledge about that separating like what modules go where, if it goes like to the kernel, regardless of the PscgBuildOS, it was the previous videos, and now inside PscgBuildOS, your knowledge is now complete. So congratulations.